we can progress in our devotional service. It is said before chanting, we should remember Haridas Thakur, beg for his mercy so that we can progress in devotional service nicely. So, still, Niranjan, the meaning of Niranjan is going on. Can someone say where we had stopped last time?
Hare Krishna Mataji, we have to start from Brahma Sutra 1.1.17. Yeah, Mataji.
So till now, Shvetashvatara Upanishad quotations have been given that how one has to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead if at all he wants liberation. Now, Niranjana means, Anjana means the material position. Niranjana means no desire for any material position, because Krishna is the Supreme Person, everything belongs to him. We are just servant of Krishna. That is the only identification we should have. There should not be any other identification beyond this. The moment we have any other identification or we identify anything beyond this, that is a cause of our bondage. So Brahma Sutra also speaks about this. In the Brahma Sutra 1.1.17, it is stated, Bheda Vyapadesascha. So since the blissful Lord is different from the living entities, he cannot be accepted as belonging to the category of the living entities. Brahma Sutra 1.1.21 also states, Bhedavya Padesascha Chanyah. The super soul has been ascertained as different from exalted living entities like the sun god. Therefore, the super soul is certainly different from the living entities. Brahma Sutra again 1.1.29 also states, Na Vakturatmo Padeshad iti ched adhyatma sambandha bhuma yasmin. The Lord has established himself as the only worshipable object. The characteristics of the super soul are found in the individual soul to a great extent. Yet the super soul is the ecstatic and almighty life and soul of the living entity. Now Brahma Sutra 1.2.8 states, Sambhoga praptir iti chenna vaisheshyat. The distinction between the living entity and the Supreme Lord is that living entity possesses a material body and is therefore under the control of karma. But even though the Supreme Lord dwells within the bodies of the living entities, he is not under the control of karma. That is why he is not subjected to the feelings of material happiness and distress. Brahma Sutra 1.2.11 states, Gham pravishta vatmanam hiye hitad darshanat. Both the living entity and the super soul are situated within the core of the living entity's heart. This is well known through the Puranas. The Brahma Sutra 1.2.17 states, Anavastiter asambhava chanetaraha. The personality within your eyes is none other than the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The characteristics of Brahman, such as immortality, cannot remain in a reflection in the sun god or in the ordinary living entities. Brahma Sutra 1.2.20 states, Sharirashchobhaye pihi bhede naina madhiyate. Both the living entity and the super soul are present within the body. But the followers of the Kanva and Madhyandina branches of the Veda accept the super soul as different than the individual soul. Brahma Sutra 1.2.28 states, Ataivana devata bhuma bhutam cha. Neither the living entities nor the demigods are fit to be called Vaishvanar or the super soul. Only Lord Vishnu is the super soul. Brahma Sutra 1.3.5 states, Bhedavya Padeshat. The super soul is one and object of knowledge, whereas the living entities are many and the knowers. Thus they are different. Brahma Sutra 1.3.7 states, Sthitya Dhanabhyam cha. One remains in the tree of material existence simply as a witness, while the other enjoys the fruits of that tree in the form of the results of karma. Therefore, they are different. Brahma Sutra 1.3.12 states, Anya Bhava Vyavretascha. He is unseen, yet he sees everything. He is unheard, yet he is the object of hearing. Therefore, none other than the Supreme Brahman in is inexhaustible. Brahma Sutra 1.3.18 states, Itara para marshad sa iti chen na sambhavat, while describing the word dahara or the super soul, dahara or the super soul. The living entities are also sometimes referred to as dahara. Therefore, one should not consider the super soul as an ordinary living entity, because the 8 extraordinary qualities attributed to the super soul can never fully manifest in the living entities. Brahma Sutra 1.3.20 states, Anyartascha Paramarsha. The mention of the living entities in relation to the Dahara or the super soul indicates that the living entity are meant to acquire knowledge about the super soul. When a living entity achieves the Supreme Brahman through his service, he can also access these 8 extraordinary qualities. Brahma Sutra 1.3.42 states, Shushupta Yuttkrantayor Bhedena. Both during deep sleep and after giving up the body, living entity and the super soul or supreme Brahman remain different. It is improper to say that a liberated soul becomes the supreme Brahman. Moreover, the living entity does not possess the quality of omniscience. Hence, the difference is certain. So, till here, let us see. So, 8 extraordinary qualities which Supreme Brahman has: deathless, ageless. We have studied this in Bhakti Shastri. No hunger, no thirst, always blissful, all cognizant, all pervasive. So, all these qualities which is there in the Supreme Brahman can be achieved by the individual soul to some extent only when he gives up the propensity of material enjoyment. Then only he can understand that I am deathless. If a person identifies himself with the body, he also always has fear. There's another quality which is known as fearless also. The Lord is fearless. Lord has no death. Lord has no old age. Lord has no thirst. Lord has no hunger. So all these things when we are mentioning, what we're talking about, there is no material thirst. There is no material hunger. There is always bliss which is experienced. So this hankering for name and fame, hankering for acquisition of material things, that makes us just go in the birth and death cycle. That is how there is a soul which is watching, and there is a soul which is enjoying the results of its fruits. Samani Vukshe Nimagna. Samani Vukshe Purusha Nimagna. We have studied this verse. Where in one tree there are 2 souls, and where they are present in the region of heart. Which region of heart? The spiritual region of heart. So one bird is observing, and the other bird is enjoying its karma fruits, karmic reactions or karma fruits, enjoying, engrossed in performing material activities, sometimes bitter fruit, sometimes sweet fruit, and in this way. So the moment we forget our relationship with Krishna, then we are put in ignorance. And this ignorance causes us to travel in many, many different spaces. So that has been given. And then there is Bheda. This Bheda between Jiva and Super Soul. Sometimes both are referred to Atma. One is Atma, one is Paramatma. Sometimes Atma is referred to even mind also. Sometimes to intelligence also. Sometimes to soul. But Atma, which Atma? Super Soul, that is Paramatma. Both are present. And even after annihilation, there is a distinct difference between Krishna and the soul. So here very clearly it has been given that no demigods can be called as Vaishvanara. You say Vaishvanara, Agni is there in the stomach, which actually digests our food. So personality of Godhead is present in our heart. He has 3 features: Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. He is present everywhere also. He is present within our heart also. He knows about everything. The soul may be knowledgeable about its own desire, but Krishna knows about everyone's desire. In this way, the quality of omniscience is not present in the living entity. That is the most important difference. Now, Brahma Sutra 2.1.23 states, Adhikantu Bheda Nirdeshata. Since the Supreme Lord possesses unlimited potencies, he is superior to the living entities. The scriptures conclude that the Supreme Lord and the living entities are different because the living entities are subject to lamentation and bewilderment, whereas the Supreme Lord is full of opulences. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, why is he giving so many quotations where distinct difference between living entity and the super soul has been given? Because natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadipaha natreva na bhavishyama sarve vahmatta param has been misinterpreted by these Mayavadis. Actually, Krishna is not speaking on the level of body, that you, me, all these things were existing before, are existing now, and will be existing in the future. He is not mentioning on the bodily platform. Here, previous to this verse, Ashochan Anvashochatsvam Pragyavadam Shabhashit Gatasuna Gatasum Shananu Shochanti Panditaha. You are speaking like a Pandita. But actually, you're lamenting for that thing which is not fit for lamentation. That means bodily concept has been completely rejected by Krishna. So when Krishna is showing some similarity that I, you, and every one of us were existing, will be existing, are existing, it is completely on the spiritual platform. So though living entities and super soul are eternal, many of the qualities are matching, eternity is matching, everything is matching, but still there is a distinct difference. The scriptures speak about the distinct difference between the living entity and super soul. Living entities, they come in the marginal potency. They can be carried away also because of the lamentation, because of the bewilderment. They are subject to that. Now, Brahma Sutra states, Ukranti Gataya Gatinam. The living entity is infinitesimal. So he gives up his body, wanders to other planets, again returns to this world to enjoy the fruits of his karma. The Lord is infinite and all pervading. So these things are not applicable to him. Brahma Sutra 2.3.26 states, Pruthak Upadeshat. Just see two words, Pruthak Upadeshat. These are known as aphorisms. Sutra, no? Brahma Sutras. When the whole Vedas were condensed, there were 526 sutras which Vedavyasa gave. Just two words. Sutras are just two words. The whole Vedas were condensed. And then natural commentary for the sutras is Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, Pruthak Upadeshat, the constitutional knowledge of the soul is eternal. When the material designation of a conditioned living entity are vanquished, his original consciousness is revived. That is why it says, Sarvopadhi Vinirmuktam, Tatparatvena Nirmalam, Rishikena Rishikesha, Sevanam Bhakti Uchate. It's not so easy to perform devotional service. We are just in the practice ground. The more we practice, we come out of what I like, what I don't like. I may like many things. I may have different views, but what Shastras has to speak. So giving up our material designation, material propensity, material thought process, and reviving our original consciousness, then only we can serve Krishna very nicely, and that is Bhakti Uchate. Brahma Sutra 2.3.29 states, Tadguna Saratva Tadvyapadeshaha Pratyavat. Although the living entity is called knower, he is full of knowledge because this quality is constitutionally present in him, exactly the same as Lord Vishnu is declared by the Vedas to be omniscient, yet he is full of eternal knowledge. So just see this most important point. Soul is also knowledgeable because he has the quality of Krishna. Like the drop of sea has the quality of sea, even soul is knowledgeable. So what restricts him to become knowledgeable? That is the ignorance which is covering him. And this ignorance is because of overly attachment. Brahma Sutra 2.3.43 states, Amsho Nana Vyapadeshat The living entities are part and parcels of the Supreme Lord. Amsho Nana Vipadesha. They are not the Supreme Brahman himself. Their relationship with the Lord is that of dependence on the Lord. In this, when Sri Bhashya was being written by Ramanujarya, at the time Kuratalwar was told to edit. There, Ramanuja writes, living entities are independent. Kuratalwar was not approving this. He said, why? Because he wanted to test what Kuratalwar says. He says, no, he cannot be independent. He is dependent on the mercy of Krishna. You just don't write he is independent. You write he is dependent on the Lord. And that dependency on the Lord makes him independent in this material world. So they are very wonderful. 2 times, 3 times, 2 to 3 times, Kuratalwar goes to Goshti Purana. Somehow he's not digesting the statement that the soul is independent. He says, no, soul cannot be independent. Soul is dependent on the mercy of the Lord. And that dependency is actual independence. Brahma Sutra 2.3.50 states, Abhasa evacha. How nice. One small sutras, like aphorisms. Abhasa evacha. Abhasa evacha. Both the living entities and incarnations as such as Matsya have been described as Amsha or parts. Yet the opponents attempt to establish equality between the living entity and the incarnations of the Lord with the argument that both are parts of the Supreme Person is simply a reflection of the truth and is contaminated by the fault of Sat Pratipaksha or honest opposition. Now, Etecham Sakalapumsaha Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Mudyanti Yuge Yuge. We have studied this verse in second chapter, 7th verse, Bhagavad Gita. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, Ete cha amsaha kala pumsaha. So, amshaha are the living entities. Amsha is dependent on Amshi. Now, Amshi is Krishna, and Krishna's avatars are Kala avatars, Leela avatars. Though they are also parts of Lord, but this part and that part cannot be said to be the same because they are all Vishnu Tattvas. And we come in marginal Tattva. So incarnations such as Matsya are parts because they have been invested with partial potencies, whereas the living entities are parts because they are localized, minute in quantity. So now see how Matsya, Kurma and all they become parts. Because they have been given, the Krishna appears with partial potency. Same Lord, not showing all his potencies, partial potency. Here, they are localized. They are made to be situated in a particular body. And they are minute in quantity. In this way, there are innumerable Vedic statements and sutras that describe the relationship between Dasa and Prabhu, or between the living entities and Vishnu. The proud scholars who are envious of the Vaishnavas and who ridiculed the process of chanting the holy names of Krishna used to say, the living entity is Supreme Brahman. In other words, there is no difference between the living entity and the Supreme Brahman. Therefore, we find no reason for the Vaishnavas to consider Vishnu, the master, and the living entities his eternal servants. Because of such persons, material considerations or conceptions, they thought that the relationship of master and servant between Vishnu and the living entity is certainly abominable, temporary, and contaminated by the material moods. So here, very clearly it has said, those who are envious of the Vaishnavas, they cannot understand. They cannot even see, they cannot understand the relationship of Krishna and his servants. So this Das Prabhu concept cannot be understood by Mayavadis. Such is the biggest purport of the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for the verse number 11, where this word Niranjana has been described. Ami Brahma, Amaiti, Vaishe Niranjana, Dasa Prabhu Bhedana, Vedava karayaki karana. So, Ami Brahma Amatai Vesha Niranjana. I am the Supreme Brahman. Within me sits the Absolute Lord. So, where is the difference between master and servant? Now, just see, this can be misunderstood. There is a difference between master and servant. That means master and servant cannot be separated. That relationship will go on. If we don't understand this line, then what will happen? I am the Supreme Brahman. Anybody can say, I am the Supreme Brahman. Within me sits the Supreme Lord. Yes, I am the Supreme Brahman. Here, what has been spoken, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants to say, that Jiva is also Brahman. But which Brahman? Jiva Brahman. He is a Jiva Brahman. And there is Lord who is seated in the heart of every living, every body. So there is a soul, there is a supreme soul. So where is the difference between master and servant here applies to? Where is the difference in the thought processes? Now master wants the servant to not to suffer in this material world. Servant also doesn't want to suffer in this material world. So that is how a person cannot suffer when he understands the distinct difference first. What is the difference? I am servant, Krishna is master. And at the same time, understanding that we are inseparable from Lord. We belong to Krishna. So that is why so much of big explanation has been given so that the Mayavadis or ignorant person should not misunderstand this verse. Samsari sakala bale magiya khaite dukhi dakiya balaye hari loka janaite. The materialists, what they do, they loudly chant the name of Hari to attract the attention of correcting alms. So how the materialistic thoughts are? Because they think that everything is situated in one, they consider themselves as the same. Sometimes people criticize. Here, the whole Sandarbha is, there are people who were criticizing the ones who were reading Bhagavatam, who were chanting the holy name. The devotees were performing kirtan. Lord was distributing love and devotion to everyone. So people used to criticize, hey, why are they chanting loudly? Hey, we are Supreme Brahman. Now we are just Jiva Brahman. We are not Supreme Brahman. But their interpretation is, we are Supreme Brahman. And Lord is also there within us. So where is the difference? So now what is the difference? That has been spoken by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. At the same time, what is similarity? 8 qualities are similar. But when it will be similar? Only when we come out of this material resignation and completely surrender to Krishna, then we can understand our eternity. So here we'll stop. Any questions you can ask? No questions? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Madhu.
Yeah.
Madhu, this Brahma Sutra 2.3.29 says living entities are nowhere. And then again it says they are covered or whatever. And that is the reason they are not able to understand. So very difficult to understand this part. Means there is knowledge inside but not coming outside. So can you give some better example, Madhu?
There is knowledge inside not coming outside because of the cover. Maya Javanika Chandam Agyadokshajam Abhyayam Kunti Maharani says. There is a curtain. To remove that curtain, it's not so easy. The stubbornness is there. No, I don't want to give up. I just want to hold. We can see that stubbornness in the children also. Sometimes they don't want to give up their toys. In the same way, we don't want to give up our positions. That stubbornness does not allow the stubbornness in not changing our thought process also. We just want to do what we like, but we don't want to follow the Shastras. When this type of attitude is there, then that stubbornness makes us very rigid in this material life. The stubbornness can go to any extent. So, though the knowledge is there within all of us, it will not come out because of that stubborn curtain which we are unable to remove. So why one gives himself to the Guru, spiritual master? Well, he will have an axe to break this stubbornness. That is the only way we can progress in devotional service. So knowledge is there, but we don't want to understand.
Okay, thank you,
So
Mataji. Hare
it is
Krishna.
not actually we are getting the knowledge from outside to inside. It is there. We are reviving this knowledge. That has been spoken. So coming Saturday, we have Yajna from 6:30, 7 o'clock. I have just made this little timing 6:37 because it is office day. Even by 7 also, if you all reach, it will be nice. Gita Yajna, let us all participate very nicely. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay,
There are two.
Vaishnav Gaur Prabhu has done. Yeah. Yes, Prabhuji.
Mataji, this verse number 11 is spoken by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because it's that I am a supreme Brahman.
No,
or
no,
it is by Vrindavan Das Thakur.
no. It is spoken by the people who were teasing. That see, they were all chanting, and Mahaprabhu is explaining. At that time, there were certain people who were very much anti. So they were teasing. Now the whole thing is started with that only. They were teasing. So they were telling, hey, what is this? Why these people are chanting? Actually, there is a difference between God and so that has been told. And even if you take it, Caitanya Mahaprabhu saying, then also this verse applies. He is that Supreme Brahman. Lord is residing and there is no difference. So this verse can be applicable, but this verse is not applicable for Atma. This verse is applicable for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu only.
Okay.
Very tricky verse this is. If you go some few verses behind, then you can understand these some people are speaking like this, envious people. Answering to them, if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, because immediately 12th verse says the materialist is said. That means, so that this verse is spoken by materialists.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
And anyone else? Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Mataji, you said that the demigods are not Vaishnavas. Why, Mataji?
Vaishvanar. Yeah, Lord's one of the name is Vaishvanar, Agni, Vaishvanar, not Vaishnavas, Vaishvanar. See the spelling? Vaishvanar. Isn't it? Not Vaishnavas. They are Vaishnavas only, no? Vaishvanar. Okay. Stop here.
Mataji प्रिया माताजी ने चैट में कुछ क्वेश्चन डाला है.
किसने?
प्रिया माताजी ने.
Soul get body as per karma. How this soul looks? Is this a light or a what? Every soul has a spiritual body. But we forget that. Then we have to suffer. How? Because the consciousness is put in the matter. And that consciousness has the capacity to manipulate the matter. So the consciousness has no form. But the soul, which always has a spiritual body, has a form according to the rasa. Now, because it is Sharajiva, that rasa tattva is forgotten. Akshara jivas have the rasa tattva. That is why they have a beautiful individual form. Now, the form which is there for the soul in the spiritual world, it is forgotten by the consciousness. That is why we don't remember what form we have. We are in the spiritual world, which form we have. Every soul has a form. It is not formless. It has a form. But what form we are taking here, that is consciousness is the consciousness is in matter. And see the power of consciousness. It has the capacity again to take up a particular form. or take up a body with a particular form to be more appropriate. It's a difficult subject matter to be, but we can contemplate on that. We are all from the spiritual world, isn't it? We are not produced here. We are from the spiritual world. Why we have forgotten our relation? Why we have forgotten our relation? Because of being envious with Krishna. But the acharyas, when they come, they are not Sharajivas. That is why they are Akarana Jarma. They don't have any Karana for their coming. We have so many reasons for coming. I loved my dog. That is why I had to come here as a dog. But for acharyas, they come to reclaim conditioned souls like us. Okay. That is very difficult. True. Hare Krishna.